What I started to realize as I continued to teach and I continued to draw is that when you're teaching, you're learning and unlearning everything you know as well. So for me, I see education and my own practice as completely synergistic. My name's Dexter Orszagh. I'm an artist and educator. My practice revolves around figuration, drawing the human body, and addressing contextual concerns of mythology, history, politics, and gender. I'm primarily dealing with a sort of mythologized interpretation of race and gender through the kind of political dynamic that we can observe today in reality, but also through like the context of post-colonialism and imperialism, and also sort of ideas around increasingly apocalypse and this idea of transformative phases and how systems don't just end but continue on in new cycles. I didn't really have a lot of people who had art educations around me when I was young, so a lot of what I understand about art actually came through things like comic books and manga and things like that. So my attitude towards like text and image are kind of interlinked. I see them both as just conveyances of symbolic information, actually. So I think where I'm at with drawing these days is I might not be drawing as much, but when I do, it's big. So it feels very involved. I'm moving towards more textual thoughts, more context, more even bits of like world building, but also big monumental drawings. I'm very opportunistic with like the space I might get or a location, and I say, right, this is the time we're going to do something monumental, really big, and articulate that. That's kind of what I did in Antigua and Barbuda. So the residency itself was an awesome opportunity in terms of what I did there and how that worked. I went out there with fellow artist David Gardner, and we were really primarily working with the local government to teach classes to students of quite a young age. And for me, it was about understanding them, but more directly, more distinctly, how do young people view art and view drawing. Staying calm, and I'm working through the shapes that I can. So part of really what I wanted to do was form that understanding and not go in with any sort of preconceived notions. What I found generally was that these kids were awesome and they were super capable, and what I experienced was a very vibrant attitude towards education, and it felt a little bit more holistic, like a young person should learn how to draw, a young person should learn science, maths, and the two could really be synergist, which is kind of how I see it, you know, like I think drawing is part of how we understand how the world works and how we work as people, and there was receptiveness to that. So that baseline attitude made the teaching a pleasure. I spent a long time purely studying the body and like how to draw people, and I still do it quite a lot, still enjoy to do it. But I suppose for me, context and understanding things like history and geopolitics is so important to me, is because we are bodies, we're human people inside of these complicated situations, and not just to understand what's gone on, but to kind of navigate and build a path forward. And I'm not claiming to be able to do it for anyone, and definitely not everybody, but at least for myself. Through drawing the body, through being able to create figures with an understanding of that context, there is an opportunity to produce images which are quite hopeful, or images which are able to frame these issues, as varied as they may be, in a way that I would word it as giving us a sort of mythological heroism that's contemporary. So in some of the work that I produced while I was in Antigua, I was really trying to create, or at least harness, archetypes of Caribbean people, Black people, that weren't just subject to or victims of their past or the climate of their existence, which is deeply affected by climate change, for example, but actually as leaders of like a march into a new future. or at least a cyclical future which is unraveling in a way that's maybe more positive or actually coming out on top of some of these challenges. Every day we were driven from our location in Hodges Bay into St. John's, which is where we would teach, which is the capital of Antigua. So that was awesome because we got to see two different sides to an island, but we also had these drives where we got to talk to different people who were sort of staff of the establishment. Those conversations became almost like a meditation on what it means to be Antiguan. And I would often just like happily just sit and listen.
You have to put in the time for music, because music is jealous. It is.
And that felt very valuable because we weren't just sort of there to see and to draw, but I was there to hear and to listen and to try to kind of understand as well. I did a lot of writing actually, journaling, just kind of noting down what people were saying and feeling about not just the world, but the world in relation to what it means to be Antiguan or from Antigua and Barbuda, and then making artworks that were sort of inspired by this, and then meditating on those fundamentals to then take back to the students who, like, on some level were maybe kind of like subject to all of these thoughts. It was like a transgenerational kind of treatise on what was going on. Those that were how the days were spent, conversations, drawing, and attempting to understand. We worked with a guy called Vincent, who was one of these people that was helping us to get around the island. Vincent, in his own time, was a saxophonist. And he invited us one day to go and see him perform. And it was a wonderful evening, but a wonderful evening of drawing, capturing him moving and producing this music. And that moment, those drawings helped to form kind of like the front part of this big kind of mural style drawing that I was working on to sort of move through these ideas. This was actually my first residency, so I was really nervous about going in because you kind of have this sense of like, oh, I want to produce something that sort of validates my time there, which is not necessarily the best way to view it, but I felt that way anyway. So I said, okay, right, I'll take the experiences I'm having, I'll take the conversations I'm having, and I'll start to design a sort of monumental piece with figures. But I thought, this is an opportunity to articulate something that is about my concerns as vectored through what I'm learning here on this island from the people here, and having like a solid chunk over a month to just commit to something that was big. It felt really good, and I was able to challenge myself by committing to that large scale. A lot of what I did was design. There was a lot of like thinking and collaging and doing little sketches to figure out where these figures were going to be, who they were going to be, what they were doing. But I think ultimately, I'm happy with the outcome.